Hey everyone, welcome back to Lost in Thailand, your go-to channel for everything happening in the land of smiles. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest updates about life, travel, and culture in Thailand. Today I want to talk to you about what's really going down in Thailand right now. If you've been following tourism news, you've probably seen those viral videos from Pattaya, that famous resort town. In early 2025, there was this incident that absolutely blew up the internet. Almost 100 men basically set up camp right on the city beach, with mats, food, alcohol, and by morning they left behind what looked like a garbage dump. And you know what? This is far from an isolated incident. Western tourists who've been going to Thailand for years are now saying things like, "I came here for Thai culture, not Indian culture." Sounds harsh, right? But let's break down what's actually happening and why tensions are running so high. The thing is, the tourist flow to Thailand has changed dramatically over the past few years. Where it used to be mostly Europeans, Americans, Australians, now the picture is completely different. The number of Indian tourists has grown by 340% from 2019 to 2024. Can you imagine? More than triple. Why did this happen? It's simple. Flights got cheaper, visas became easier to get, and for many Indians, Thailand became their first international trip ever. And this is where problems start. Because when people travel abroad for the first time, they often don't know local rules and customs. Look, here are the cultural differences that create tension. In India, it's absolutely normal to gather in large groups in public spaces. Parks, squares, beaches, they're like an extension of home. You can lay out food, have a picnic, take a nap if you're tired. This is part of the culture that's been shaped over centuries. But Thailand has a completely different approach. There's this concept called sanuk, which means pleasure, joy. But there's another important concept, grangjai, which means being considerate and restrained toward others. So enjoy yourself, but don't disturb others. And you get this classic culture clash. Indian tourists behave the way they're used to at home, talking loudly, gathering in big groups, maybe playing music on their phones. For them, this is normal, this is joy, this is vacation. But Western tourists and locals perceive this as disrespectful and chaotic. The differences in sound perception are especially noticeable. In Indian culture, loudness often means joy, fun, life energy. Silence might be perceived as sadness or even unfriendliness. But in Thailand, it's the opposite. Loudness is often perceived as aggression or disrespect to others. Or take queuing. In some cultures, it's perfectly normal to push a little to get ahead. It's not considered rude. It's just part of life. But for Thais and Western tourists, this looks chaotic and disrespectful. And here's another thing that really gets on people's nerves: walking in the road instead of on sidewalks. I've heard from local drivers and expats that it's becoming a real issue. Groups of tourists just walk down the middle of the street, completely oblivious to traffic. In many parts of India, sidewalks might not exist or might be blocked by vendors, so people naturally use the road. But in Thailand, this drives local drivers absolutely crazy. They're trying to navigate through traffic, and suddenly there's a group of people just strolling down the road like it's a park. It's not malicious, but it creates dangerous situations and a lot of frustration. And all this is made worse by social media. You know how algorithms work? They show what triggers emotions. Videos with scandals get millions of views, while normal, positive content goes unnoticed. So conflicts get artificially inflated. Plus, these echo chambers form. Western tourists read complaints from other Western tourists. Indian travelers see defense from their compatriots. And instead of dialogue, you get even more division. This is already affecting the tourism economy. According to the Pattaya Hotel Association, about 15% of Western tourists who regularly visited the resort chose other destinations in 2024. They just went to Cambodia, Vietnam, the Philippines, places where, in their opinion, that atmosphere they fell in love with in Asia still exists. What's interesting is that Pattaya actually has what locals call the Arab Quarter, though nowadays it's predominantly Indian tourists and businesses that have established themselves there. You'll find Indian restaurants, shops selling Indian goods, hotels catering specifically to Indian families. It's created this sort of cultural enclave where people can feel at home, but it's also contributed to this sense of separation rather than integration. Some say it's natural. People like to be around familiar culture when they travel. Others worry it's creating a divided city. And if you walk down Beach Road, you'll see what I'm talking about. The crowds there have completely changed. Let's be honest here. Pattaya has always been known for a certain type of tourism, including sex tourism, and that hasn't changed. Many Indian tourists are coming for the same reasons that brought visitors from other countries for decades. But the sheer numbers and the way large groups move through these areas has changed the whole dynamic of the Strip. Now let me tell you about some specific situations I've heard about from locals and long-term expats. Hotel owners are dealing with completely new challenges. One hotel manager told me about Indian families of 8 people booking a single room meant for 2, then cooking meals, using rice cookers they brought from home. They're not trying to be difficult. Back in India, extended families often share space, and home-cooked food is both cheaper and more familiar. But when the hotel's electrical system isn't designed for multiple cooking appliances, and when the smell of spices fills the hallways, other guests start complaining. Restaurant owners have similar stories. Groups of 10 people will come in, order 1 or 2 dishes and several cups of water, then share everything family style. Again, this is completely normal in Indian culture. Sharing food is a sign of love and community. But from a business perspective, when a table that could generate $100 in revenue only brings in 20, it's not sustainable. Some restaurants have started implementing minimum order policies, which then creates more tension. The bargaining culture is another flashpoint. In Indian markets, haggling isn't just expected, it's part of the social interaction. Not bargaining can actually be seen as rude or lazy. But in Thailand, especially in tourist areas, many prices are fixed, and aggressive bargaining can be perceived as disrespectful. I've witnessed situations where tourists become genuinely upset when vendors won't negotiate on already cheap items, and vendors get frustrated because they feel their hospitality is being taken advantage of. Transportation is yet another area where cultural differences create friction. Tuk-tuk drivers and taxi operators tell me about passengers who want to cram more people into vehicles than safety allows, or who expect to negotiate fares that are already regulated by local authorities. The concept of meter rates versus negotiated prices varies so much between countries that what seems fair to one group feels like exploitation to another. Let me share something interesting about the timing of all this. The explosion in Indian tourism to Thailand coincided with several factors beyond just economic growth in India. First, China's strict COVID policies kept Chinese tourists away for much longer than other nationalities. Chinese visitors had been Thailand's largest tourist group for years, so there was this huge gap in the market. Thailand's tourism authority actively courted Indian tourists to fill that void, with marketing campaigns specifically targeting Indian social media platforms and travel influencers. But here's what they didn't account for: the cultural preparation aspect. When Chinese tourism boomed in the 2000s and 2010s, there were similar complaints about behavior, noise, and cultural insensitivity. But the Chinese government and tourism industry gradually implemented education programs. Tour guides were trained, cultural orientation became standard, and social media influencers promoted respectful travel behavior. It took years, but the situation improved significantly. With Indian tourism, the growth happened so fast that there wasn't time for this gradual cultural adaptation. One year, Pattaya had a few thousand Indian visitors. The next year, it was tens of thousands, and now it's hundreds of thousands. The infrastructure, both physical and cultural, simply couldn't keep up. And here's something important. Many of the Indian tourists having problems are traveling abroad for the first time. They're usually middle-aged guys in groups, and they don't know how things work outside India. But younger Indian travelers, who've been to other countries before, they adapt way faster and cause way fewer problems. The economic impact is more complex than it initially appears. Yes, some Western tourists are choosing other destinations, but Indian tourists are also bringing money into the economy. The average Indian tourist might spend less per person than a European tourist, but they often travel in larger groups and stay longer. A European couple might spend $3,000 over a week, while an Indian family of 6 might spend $4,000 over 2 weeks. From a pure revenue perspective, it's not necessarily worse for local businesses. However, the type of spending is different. Indian tourists often prefer street food and local markets over high-end restaurants. They're more likely to stay in budget accommodations rather than luxury resorts. This benefits some sectors of the economy while hurting others. Street vendors and budget hotels are thriving, while upscale establishments are struggling. The environmental impact is becoming a serious concern too. Large groups tend to generate more waste, especially when they're bringing food from outside and eating in public spaces. The beach cleaning crews in Pattaya report collecting significantly more trash, especially food packaging and disposable plates. It's not that Indian tourists are intentionally littering more than others, but when you have larger groups eating communally in spaces that weren't designed for that purpose, waste management becomes a challenge. Local residents are caught in the middle of all this. Many depend on tourism for their livelihoods, so they can't afford to alienate any group of visitors. But they're also seeing their neighborhoods change in ways that make them uncomfortable. The noise levels, the crowding, the different uses of public spaces. It all adds up to a sense that their home is becoming unrecognizable. Some Thai locals have told me they feel like strangers in their own town. Walking down streets they've known their whole lives, they now hear more Hindi and Punjabi than Thai. The shops sell different products. The restaurants serve different food. Even the smell of the air has changed with all the different spices and cooking styles. But here's what gives me hope. I've also heard stories of genuine connection and friendship. A Thai street food vendor who learned to make samosas to attract Indian customers. An Indian family that returns every year and has become close friends with their hotel owners. A group of Indian and Western tourists who met on the beach and ended up exploring Thailand together, learning from each other along the way. The solution isn't to segregate different tourist groups or to limit certain nationalities. That would be both morally wrong and economically stupid. Instead, Thailand needs to become much more intentional about managing cultural integration in tourism. This means investing in cultural education programs that start before tourists even arrive. Airlines could include cultural orientation videos in their in-flight entertainment. Hotels could provide welcome packets that explain local customs in multiple languages. Tourist police could be trained not just in law enforcement, but in cultural mediation. The technology solutions I mentioned earlier could be game changers if implemented properly. Imagine an AI-powered translation app that doesn't just convert languages, but explains cultural context. Instead of just translating, "Please be quiet," it could explain why Thais value soft voices and how loud conversation might be perceived. Local communities need to be empowered to set and enforce their own standards. Beach communities could establish their own guidelines for public space use, with input from both locals and frequent visitors. These wouldn't be discriminatory rules targeting specific nationalities, but universal standards for behavior that everyone understands and follows. The business community needs to think creatively about accommodation rather than resistance. Instead of refusing large group bookings, hotels could design family-friendly suites that accommodate extended families appropriately. Restaurants could offer group dining options with family-style service that's profitable for both sides. Education has to work both ways. While tourists need to learn about Thai culture, Thais also benefit from understanding the cultures of their visitors. When a hotel staff member understands that sharing food is a sign of respect in Indian culture, they can find ways to accommodate it that work for everyone. The long-term goal should be creating a tourism ecosystem that celebrates diversity while maintaining respect for local culture and environment. This isn't just about Indian and Western tourists. Thailand receives visitors from dozens of countries, each with their own cultural norms and expectations. What's happening in Pattaya is a preview of challenges that tourist destinations around the world will face as travel becomes more accessible to new populations. The solutions developed here could become models for other countries dealing with rapid changes in their tourist demographics. But you know what's interesting? Many Indian tourists themselves are unhappy with what's happening. They write in comments, "I'm ashamed of my compatriots' behavior. I'm Indian myself, and I don't like what I see." So the problem isn't nationality, but lack of cultural education. And this brings us to the most important question: what do we do about it? Because arguing and blaming each other is pointless. We need concrete solutions. First and most important, education. Imagine if before getting a visa to Thailand, you had to take a short online course about local culture. Not some boring lecture, but interesting videos with real examples. show how to behave on the beach, how to talk in hotels, what you can and can't do. We could create a cool mobile app called Respectful Tourist. You open it, choose your location, and it shows you rules for that specific place. Beach has some rules, temples have others, shopping centers have different ones, plus a reward system. Follow the rules, get discounts at restaurants and shops. It's really important to improve infrastructure. Many problems arise simply because beaches don't have enough restrooms, trash cans, rest areas. People improvise, and chaos results. We need to create special zones, quiet ones for peaceful rest, active ones for groups, family ones with extra amenities. Travel companies should also bear more responsibility. If you're selling a Thailand tour, hold a mandatory briefing for clients. Give them written materials about local customs. Provide accompaniment by qualified guides who know how to work with different cultures. How about cultural exchange programs? Imagine joint cooking workshops where Indian tourists teach how to make curry and Thais show how to make tom yum. Or language exchanges, cultural festivals. And speaking of festivals, you've probably noticed that Pattaya now regularly hosts Indian celebrations like Holi, Diwali, and other festivals. Some locals love the color and energy these bring to the city, while others feel like their town is being transformed into something they don't recognize. But here's the thing, when these festivals are organized properly, with respect for local regulations and cleanup afterward, they can actually become amazing cultural bridges. When people get to know each other personally through shared celebrations, stereotypes break down. We could introduce a green tourist system, like a loyalty program, but for good behavior. Complete an educational course, follow the rules, get discounts, free tours, priority service. People love bonuses, so why not use this for good? And of course, we need to actively promote positive examples on social media. Create content that shows how great it is when different cultures meet with mutual respect. Stories about friendships between tourists of different nationalities, joint adventures, mutual help. Thailand could become a pioneer in sustainable multicultural tourism. Imagine a country where tourists of different nationalities don't just tolerate each other, but enrich each other's experiences. Where differences between cultures become a source of interest, not conflict. You know what the problem with modern tourism is? Many people think that since they paid money, they have the right to do whatever they want. But tourism isn't just a service, it's cultural exchange. And like any exchange, mutual respect is important here. When I travel, I always remember a simple rule. You're a guest in someone else's country, and like any guest, you should respect the rules of the house you've entered. Doesn't matter what country you're from, what your skin color is, how much money you have. Only one thing matters, the ability to behave with dignity and respect. And one more important thing, tourists of all nationalities have problems. I've seen drunk Brits causing trouble in bars. I've seen Germans hogging pool chairs with towels at 5 a.m. I've seen Americans demanding hamburgers in traditional Thai restaurants. So let's not point fingers at one specific group. The problem isn't where people came from, but how they behave. And the solution isn't bans or discrimination, but education and mutual understanding. Thailand is at a crossroads. Decisions made now will determine the future not only of Thai tourism, but will serve as an example for other countries, because similar problems exist everywhere mass tourism develops. I believe there's a way out, but it requires joint efforts from everyone: government, tourism companies, locals, and tourists themselves. Everyone must contribute to creating more respectful and sustainable tourism. What do you think? Have you encountered similar problems in your travels? What solutions do you think would work best? Write in the comments. Let's discuss. And remember, the world becomes better when we learn to understand and respect each other. Thanks for watching Lost in Thailand. If this video helped you understand what's really happening with tourism in Thailand, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more honest discussions about life in Thailand. We upload new content every week, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. See you in the next video.